Hello, universe, world, or wherever you're listening to me from. This is Mark Allen Karanja, and this is the introductory episode of Piquing Duck. Now, you might be wondering why Piquing Duck and why a podcast? My goodness, yet another podcast that you have to listen to. First of all, you do not have to listen to the podcast, but I would highly encourage it. The podcast was born from realizing that I've been very lucky in my life to have very many people with whom I've had wonderful conversations. And I tend to have these conversations every other day. And as we sit there reminiscing and thinking and ruminating and digesting what we've just talked about, some of my friends say, could you imagine if this were a podcast? Could you imagine how many people would want to hear this perspective or would want to hear from someone like you? And I thought, yes, because this is also the year that I've decided I've had enough of negating myself and negating my thoughts and diminishing myself. And yes, I do have an opinion, and sometimes I'd like to share it. The name Piquing Duck obviously is a play on words, because I am currently based in Beijing, and anyone who knows anything about Beijing is the famous dish from this city is Piquing Duck. But also, pique is one of my all-time favorite words because it means to arouse interest. So all of the conversations that we're going to have are points of interest for me, for my guests, and possibly for you. When you tune in. As you might tell, I am not exactly proficient in having these conversations or in sitting in a room by myself and talking into a microphone, but this is what the world has come to, and I will get better at it as we continue to delve into these conversations and as you, the listener, gives us your feedback and gives us choices or ideas on what you'd like us to talk about. I will not have a set cast of guests. Guests will come as and when conversations occur to me or occur to them, or I write a piece, but most likely each podcast will have its own blog post, and this will be an accompaniment. But sometimes we will just have free-ranging conversations and see where our conversations lead us. The reason why Piquing Duck is so different from every other podcast you'll listen to out there is because we are a group of people that most people don't think about, and that is a conglomeration of foreigners and locals who live and work in the Far East, and mostly in China. When people think of safe spaces, they generally don't think about China, but I will be the first one to say, as a gay Kenyan man who has always wanted to live in a safe country where my life is as valued as everybody else's life, China is that place for us, for me, for a lot of my friends. And oftentimes, the general and the international conversation, the global conversation around gender and sexual minorities excludes people like us, because people assume that in a place like China, we are censored or we are not encouraged to have certain conversations. And to some extent, this is true. But it is not to the extent that people believe. This is a place that has welcomed a lot of us, that provides jobs, but most importantly, provides us with relationships and provides us with much needed shelter in a tumultuous world. I know this might come as a shock to a lot of people who pay attention to international news and know of China in the context of the current global crisis, the current power struggles, if you want to call it that, between the West and China. But beyond that, or underneath all of that, underlying all of that, are people like me, are people like us, the queer community, both local and international, that find refuge and solace in this country. And through our conversations, we shall share, or I shall share with you, what that looks like and what that sounds like. And I hope that this will be an informative and educational experience as well as a fun one. Please don't think that from my somber tone, I am usually this dour. I am not. It's just that I am here by myself and I don't have anyone else to crack jokes with, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is the intention behind this podcast, and the intention is to give a voice to the otherwise marginalized or to the otherwise forgotten. Those of us who are in the Far East but still call the West home, that are still plugged into the events that occur in the West, that would like to see some of the West replicated here, but also not at the cost of what is happening in these countries that we live in here in the East, because these places are places of history, they're places of culture, and unfortunately, because of current political issues, because of current political warring, we forget that these places are a wealth, are a bedrock of many civilizations. And that is also something that we're going to try and cover in this podcast. So, if you're tired of listening to me, I hope you're not. But if you are, I would encourage you to go to the next episode where I and my very first guest delve into our very first conversation. And I promise there will be a lot of laughter. It will be very lively. And we do welcome and encourage comments or questions or any sort of feedback that you have. So until then, bye-bye world.